Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hard Corner podcast, where in this episode, with Dale and Eric, we talk about public venues. We got a big one coming up here in Louisville, Kentucky. It's known as the Kentucky Derby. It's massive for our community. It's an international event. How do we keep ourselves safe when we're around a bunch of other people? Guys?
Well, I myself am a big fan of crowds. I love going and hanging out in those crowds. It's a big time. And all my time on the police department was a very enjoyable experience for that. So with that said, we know we got Derby coming up and a lot of people coming in town, a lot of hometowners also going down to those events as well. Well, just so you know, special surprise, my man Dale here spent a number of years on the police department planning security for those events and logistics. So I think he's got a pretty good insight on how to handle those events for yourself and your family.
Yeah, for sure. So just so you're aware, in all these events, there's so much planning that goes into it, specifically say for the Derby, you're talking about planning that stretches out to about 2 months. There's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of agencies involved. There's a lot of different local, state, and federal assets that are there. You may not see them, but understand that they're there for you in case of emergency. I won't go into TPPs and tell you all that stuff. Just understand that there's a lot more stuff there as far as
what's TPPs, though?
Tactics, principles,
and procedures.
Procedures.
There you go.
So, like, I'm not going to tell you where people are at or who's actually there, but there's all kinds of capabilities that you have no idea about that are there to protect you. First off. Secondly, what Brent, what questions do you have as far as, say, you're going to an event? What are top of mind things for you?
Yeah, so, I like going out to public events too. I would say when I go out to something where there's going to be 100,000 people or 50,000 people, whatever it is, I feel like there's this big argument in, hey, I want to have fun and relax and unwind. I've got friends, whatever, got this cool event going on. And, somebody could actually, freak out. So I guess I want to understand, you talk about there's preparedness. There's a lot of people there that are going to protect us as a group of people, whatever, there's safety, security teams everywhere. How do I shift that pendulum more towards, I just want to relax and hang out versus, man, I've seen a lot of stuff in the news lately. This stuff could happen anywhere. I don't want to be worried about that. So how do I balance that?
The first thing that I would say, and this is the most important thing, no matter what public venue you go to or public space, is just be aware of your surroundings. Know your exits. That's a big important thing. So a lot of times at these different events, you'll have the brought in chain link fence and they'll zip tie together to provide strength. You need to understand where those blowout points are for you to be able to actually exit. So not be afraid, not be scared, just be aware. So, if you're in an area, if something was to happen, which way should I go? Like what's the most common exit based upon whatever stimulus I receive? And what may be the best exit for me to take. And the other thing I will tell you too about entries and exits is avoid herd mentality. Just because a bunch of people are running one way doesn't mean that you should as well. Take a mental picture, give yourself a second. You want to be able to be aware of what's going around. So you've got to orient yourself to what's going on. You got to be aware of it, and you've got to act based upon the best information that you have. And sometimes following the 100 people in front of you is not the best course of action. So just be aware of your exits, entrances, and your egress for sure.
And I want to add something to that, Brent. When he talks about the exits, just because it's the closest exit doesn't mean it's the best. So like if you got the herd all heading towards the closest exit to you, well, just think if you're the last person in line, you're the closest one to danger. So sometimes maybe the furthest exit away is best if there's less people trying to get through that, because those are what we call choke points.
I'll add this too. So a lot of times the different events, not specifically Derby, which this year is different. They've got a ticket where you are allowed to go from Thursday to Saturday, and it's standing room only. When you get in those mass crowd areas where you're next to someone, you don't have a seat, just give yourself step away. Like when I go places like this, I'm going to be the guy in the back of the corner watching things or just having a good time there. So I have egress and I have escape routes, and it's not being paranoid. It's just being prepared because, like you can see on this video, if you're in that mass of people in the middle, guess what? Whatever's going to happen to you is going to happen to you. So I'm on the outside just kind of watching, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but let's say I want to be in that mass of people. I want to be up there. I want to have, the shots of the potential Derby winner on my iPhone as they walk by. So I'm going to get it right up there in it. Or let's say it's a concert and I want to get pushed right up front. I've got the sea of people behind me. You know, I don't want to miss out on an opportunity like that. Are you saying that there's still ways for me to look at possible exits and things like that? Is that what we're talking about here?
That and or just, if that's your mindset, that's what you want to do, but look at exits differently. So the video you just played was of the paddock, and they were actually having the horses go down to the track. So in an emergency, to save your life, if you had to use that as an exit, use that as an exit. So look at unconventional places as possible exits whenever you're at somewhere, whether it be a concert, whether it be a football game, just unconventional things when it's about saving your life. If it's that dire, people aren't going to care about how you exit, like law enforcement, because they're going to be more dealing with the threat or the problem.
That makes a lot of sense. And shout out to Landforms USA for that clip of the Kentucky Derby paddock from back in 2014. The place looks totally different now. So speaking of looking for exits, if it's your first time back at a place and they've done a bunch of renovations, or if it's your first time ever going to a venue, looking for those exits, that's a pretty cool point. What else?
Man, something I'm going to cover, which is kind of important, is what we call environmental monitoring, right? So being aware of your surroundings. A lot of times we want to go to these places and we want to have a good time and we want to, maybe have a couple of drinks. We kind of want to let loose, but understand, there are people there protecting you. The police department, all the safety measures that are put into place, and also the agency that hosts those events. They do the best they can, but they also have some limited resources and limited manpower. So just understand, just pay attention, watch, your surroundings. When you're walking to and from an event, I would suggest that you don't put your head down and look in your cell phone. Like you're not paying attention. Most of the time, if a criminal is going to target you, they're going to go after what we call the easy target, weak prey, right? They don't want to be challenged. They don't want to be put at a disadvantage. So they're going to go after people who aren't paying attention. And even if you don't know what you're doing, if you just fake it, you're going to make it, right? So just act like you do. So pay attention. If somebody kind of gives you the creeps or the giving you a vibe that you don't really enjoy, I would advise you to make eye contact with them. Let them know that you're paying attention, that you're watching, and they're not just sneaking around. I'm not saying you have to engage in a conversation or you have to challenge anybody, but at least let them know that you're paying attention and they're not going unobserved. So we call that environmental monitoring, and just pay attention, like Dale's talking about. Walking around, knowing your exits, knowing your egress, kind of have a little bit of a game plan in your head. If you see something that kind of makes you feel uncomfortable, we have the saying called see something, say something. Backpacks that are laying around unattended, especially near entrance or exits, items around garbage cans, things like that. So garbage cans can be used to hide, I hate to say it, but IEDs, improvised explosive devices. So at these events, you got to understand, it's a good time, but also people with bad intent are going to target those locations because they're going to get more bang for their buck with more people.
And I would add this. I mean, I planned hundreds of events from 500 people to 200,000 people. Churchill Downs does a great job of securing their facilities, probably top notch that I've ever dealt with. Think about things like this. If you're walking across 3rd Street to go over the bridge to get to the main gate, don't be reading your program. Don't have your AirPods in. We've had some concerts before, people had AirPods in that I've worked that we planned for, and they got hit by cars because they weren't taking in those environmental cues like Eric was saying. So just be aware of what you're doing and where you're going, and just do it with intent.
Yeah, so clearly what you guys are saying is that the option of not going to an event as awesome as the Kentucky Derby is off the table. I want to go. And whether it's a Kentucky Derby or it's a concert or whatever, yeah, I like being up front, whether there's this huge crowd and it might be challenging to have an exit. But what you're also saying about environmental monitoring, monitoring this, what's going on around me, maybe not looking at my phone, not having my AirPods in or whatever it is, it's making me think a little bit different about, being out there, being in a big crowd. I think a lot of that stuff, we all look at our phones naturally. We all have AirPods in if we're listening to something else, or looking at a program if we're going to the Derby. So we got exits or egress, as you called it. We got environment monitoring, or just paying attention to what's going around. What's next?
Probably the biggest one that's changed a lot over the last couple of years since we've been teaching what we're doing is what is actually the priorities for first responders. Okay. Depending upon whatever kind of emergency could possibly happen, if it's an active aggressor event, they are going to drive to the stimulus, right? So they're not necessarily worried about the person in front of me who may be injured just because of the nature of that business. You've got to stop the threat. So understand that first responders' mindset's different. And I will say this too. I think that's been the biggest thing we've noticed in our training over the last couple of years is people's awareness of that. But just understand there's levels to response, and the active threat is always going to take priority over anything else. So those people are there to help you. That's their job. That's their goal. And they will as soon as they can. But just have the mindset that, you know what, I may have to survive this myself for the first couple minutes until I can get some help. So having that awareness / mental preparedness in conjunction with understanding the location you're at can help you for those 2 minutes where you are on your own, because in any kind of event or catastrophe at a public venue, there's going to be a point in time where you're by yourself before first responders can help you.
Never even wrapped my head around it like that. So if I can restate this in my own mind as I'm processing what you're saying, something goes sideways. There's something happening and it's really bad. What you're saying that I should prepare to do as a citizen is handle my own self for the first minute or two. Because first responders also, like me, have no idea what's going on. But rather than trying to hide or whatever that I might be doing, they're trying to figure it out and stop it. This is a very different way of processing, very different way of processing an event. I need to be prepared if something happens, that I just need to be taking care of myself for the first minute or two.
Yeah, and then process it. And then sometimes making an immediate action is not the best thing. You got to just orient yourself to what's going on, because, again, there's a lot of layers to this. By the time those guys and girls work Derby, they've worked 3 or 4 days in a row, 16-hour days. Like, is the person that you're going to be dealing with, is it their first week on the job? Is it their last week on the job? So there's just different nuances to first responder response that you need to take into account and understand that, you know what, I got to survive this until the people that can get me help can get here.
That's pretty important.
Those officers that have bad
humans.
attitudes, you got to be careful, man. Like Dale said, they've been working for days on end. I can tell you what not to do is when you see an officer out directing traffic in the middle of Central and he's got 1,000 cars around him,
don't ask him a question.
Don't walk out there and ask him a question. Don't go ask him directions. Just let him
stop driving. Yeah, don't stop driving and say, excuse me, sir.
I'm going to give you a little hint. If you ever hear this, 2 blocks up and take a left, I'm lying to you. That's something they taught us in the academy.
That means everybody. He's sending everybody that way just to get you out of the intersection.
Yeah, so, don't stop. Just keep moving.
Correct.
No, that's interesting, though. It really, I'm trying to process this, take care of myself. You know what this reminds me of? That everybody, I think, can relate to this that's ridden on an airplane. What are you supposed to do if the oxygen masks drop out of the ceiling?
Take your own before you help anybody else.
That's right. This is it's really helped me process this in a very different way. What else, you guys?
A little bonus tip for you, Brent. You want a bonus tip?
Yeah, bonus tip. We're about to wrap up.
So believe it or not, at these events, you've actually got pickpocketers. They're professional. They walk around and they steal your stuff. All right. And they're waiting for you to look at that program. They're waiting for you to get on the phone, especially in those big, tight crowds. You can't feel them bump into you and start taking your stuff. So as a pro tip, here's what we're going to suggest. Separate your money from your credit card. Put your ID, your wallet, things like that in one pocket. Put your cash in another pocket. That way, if one of those pockets gets taken, you're not left without anything. In addition, we're going to tell you to put those items in your front pockets, not your rear pockets, because you're going to have more dexterity and you're going to feel things in the front part before you would in the rear. And if you're a female and you're carrying a purse, wrap that purse around your neck and your shoulder. Don't just carry it over your arm because they'll take it off.
Man, this is awesome. Guys, I'm so glad to be a part of this podcast. It's the hard corner. Dale, Eric, thank you both very much.
See you, bro.
When you're out. Later.